Hello and welcome to episode 54 of the Comic Watchers Show. I'm your host, coming at you from Oklahoma City, Matt Meyer. With me, as usual, are Nick, coming at you from Carthage, Texas. Mike, coming at us from somewhere in the hinterlands on the East Coast. And special guest this week, you have a returning watcher, Mr. Cody White. Aloha from the Aloha State.
Aloha, everybody.
Guys, we're going to talk about some awesome books this week. We've actually got a trifecta of awesomeness. We're talking Legion of Superheroes, Undiscovered Country from Image, and New Mutants #1. But first, here's Scoop Johnson with the news.
Scoop! Right, so some new books coming out. First from Image is Protector from Simon Roy, Dan Benson. It's pretty much set in post-apocalyptic America. It's kind of being billed as Mad Max meets Conan, which is kind of cool because we're starting to see a little more of these type of titles where, you know, I don't want to say it's the new direction copy because there's been books like this for years, but it almost seems like, we had zombies and everything was a zombie, and now we're starting to see a little bit more of a post-apocalyptic type of stuff, which is always a good, it's good stories, makes for good times. Zeb Wells, Marvel news, shocking, Ant-Man is coming back. Excuse me. So Scott, in his attempt to better his life with his daughter and stuff like that, discovers a global conspiracy that the Beehive maintainers are going to help him, solve and everything. So if you're a fan of Ant-Man, I know when we shared this from our site, it's getting a little bit of, decent traffic and some folks are talking about it. So I'm not a huge Ant-Man fan, but a lot of people are, so you might want to check that out. Marvel Unlimited is expanding starting on the week of the 4th. They've already started their expansion. They're bringing a bunch of new titles, everything from Avengers to new Star Wars titles. War of the Realms type stuff is coming out. Batman Beyond 37 is announced getting a second printing, which is kind of cool because you're almost getting a Batwoman Beyond type deal. The Return of Blight, which is always kind of cool. And kind of, partial to this news, we're going to save it for the best of last, is 2000 AD is going to come out starting in April of next year with a 12-issue miniseries, which is really, really cool. There are a lot of good stories going to come out. Judge Dredd, obviously, everyone knows Judge Dredd, but they got Rogue Trooper and Tharg's Future Shock. So they got some really cool titles. If anyone out there is not familiar with their stuff beyond Judge Dredd, definitely well worth checking out, because what they're trying to do is, it's famous over here, but they're trying to open it up for more readers and kind of broaden their horizon on this side of the water. Highly recommend checking it out. Before I hand it off to Matt and everyone else, excuse me, just real quick, we do have some sneak peeks and some exclusive previews on the website. You guys should really need to check out because it's really cool. We have a sneak peek of Magnificent Miss Marvel #9. First look at Boom Studios' recently acquired Eat and Love Yourself by Sweeney Boo, which is original. She started on a Kickstarter. Boom Studios picked it up, kind of like a cult following so far on Kickstarter. Really cool stuff from that. First look at DC Green Lantern's Black Stars #2. And for you X-Men folks out there, we have exclusive preview of X-Men 2 also on the website. So obviously we can't cover all the news and all the sneak peeks and previews. So head on over to comic-watch.com and check out everything else because there's tons and tons of content growing every day. So, Matt?
Awesome. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, Scoop. Let it be known that is what Mike begged me to call him. Begged, I say.
Begged.
So first up for review this week, we're talking about Legion of Superheroes #1 from DC. This is the big official return. We had the lead-in with Legion Millennium 1 and 2. We had the lead-up in recent issues of Superman with John Kent joining the team. It's here. It's time. And it is writer Brian Michael Bendis' ball game. And on art, we've got Ryan Sook sharing ink on pencils, sharing ink duties with Wade Von Graubadger, and colors by Jordi Belair. This issue tells the tale of John Kent, aka Superboy, arriving for the first time in the 31st century to a world he has never made. It is very, very different. His mind is blown, and we have about 1 million superheroes, a veritable legion of them, in fact, to back his play and get him to orientation on time. So, guys, this is a big launch for DC. Cody, you know what? You're our special guest this week. What did you think about it?
So I really enjoyed this issue. I didn't enjoy it as much as I really wanted to, but it's still a really enjoyable issue. I thought that Bendis did what Bendis does. His dialogue is frequent, fills up the page. It's indistinguishable from character to character. He's never been a guy that's been big on, distinct voices. We know that this is what you get when you get Brian Michael Bendis on a book, especially a team book. So no surprises there. I walked into it knowing that was going to happen. It happened. It is what it is. What I thought was really interesting, and one of the things I liked about Millennium, I know I missed those shows, but this conscious focus in connecting the Legion to this moment that we're experiencing now with Unity Day and Superman and the historical precedents for the Legion. Like, that's something that often gets lost in longer Legion runs, where they're just kind of off in their own corner. They're in the 31st century. They're doing their thing. Superman's our guy. He inspired us. But that's pretty much the end of the connections. Like, there's no legacy. There's no real ties to the 20th century, 21st century, the age of heroes, like they like to call it. And Bendis said, no, I'm making those connections frequently, overtly, clear as day. Like, we have, how heavy are we doing spoilers here today? Like, we've got the artifact that they're hunting down, this unauthorized mission, is Aquaman's trident. Like, there is absolutely no question that this is occurring in the continuity of the DC universe, and I love that. It opens up so many doors for the Legion to move forward and do something that the Legion has never really done. So for that, I'm excited. I wasn't as in love with the art as I know a lot of people are, and I feel like I probably should be. I think Ryan Sook's a great artist, but it felt like maybe it was a little bit too clean here. Not bright and vibrant enough. Like, I almost feel like the Legion should be a little bit cartoony in the sense that it's so different. It's so detached. There's so many bright and colorful characters. And I felt like that kind of got lost here. I don't know if that's necessarily on Sook or, Jordi Belair is great, but the colors felt really muted here. So, I think if there was any major complaint, it was that I didn't fall in love with the art, but art's never been a make or break thing on a book for me, like, ever. So I can get past that. I'm excited for where they're going. It wasn't the most flawless first issue, but I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10. Who's next?
Mike, what did you think about Legion?
Being not a huge fan of Legion, but more of a fan of Bendis. But Cody said it perfectly, is I don't think there's really a distinction when Bendis does a book. It's really just 1,000 word bubbles on a page, which is fine because that's his style. Because when you go into, Bendis, you already know what you're going to get. So for me, not being really not a huge fan, but not really knowing where to jump in at. So I was like, might as well be here with Bendis, might as well be the number one. I thought it was pretty cool. I thought the Trident story, the Trident, with Aquaman's Trident coming in was pretty rad. The art was pretty good. I thought, at times it felt like Bendis was trying to do too much. And that could just be me not familiar a whole lot with the Legion, but it just felt at times where it was just almost too much to take in, like it was too busy. And I felt myself kind of going back and just kind of going back and forth that I missed something, or if I'm not, not catching on to something. But it was good. I enjoyed it. the story itself was really good. I'll definitely check out, more issues to come. I'm definitely not gonna, stop at one. It was enough to kind of reel me in to read more Legion. But yeah, it was good. For like I said, normally my Legion stuff comes in like the collected works, just because hell, hey, it's there type of deal. But I thought this was a great, great start. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
Awesome. Nick, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to have to go ahead and disagree with Cody on the artwork, because that was probably my favorite part of it. It wasn't vibrant enough. A lot of the pages were set against an entire white backdrop that just made every color of all these million superheroes pop. I thought whenever Bendis wanted to get into his tendencies of filling it full of word bubbles, the artwork structured it in a way that it worked. And I thought that was probably the ultimate strength of the book. Towards the end, we get like 4 or 5 pages of these double spreads that really make the book kind of open up and feel epic, where it was a bit more constrained. But I love the connections. I love Jonathan. How great does he look? That was awesome. But some of the pacing, like when Aquaman's trident shows up, I felt like it needed to be a bit more, I don't want to say action-packed, but less dialogue-filled. And that was the only instances I noticed where, this is a Bendis book, and they're going to be monologuing through every scene that you want, things to happen and to pick up. But other than that, I really enjoyed it. I'm not as well read on the Legion of Superheroes. I've dabbled. So it was great to see that it was, new reader friendly to some degree, that you can jump into it and enjoy it and, stay up to date with what's happening and not feel totally lost. So I loved that part of it. If I'm going to really stick with this series, though, it needs to be a bit more coherent. And after what Bendis has done with some recent titles like Young Justice, I know how this is going to play out. It'll be 5 issues before it really starts to totally make sense. And that's just something you need to be on board with. I don't know if I want to do that again with this series, but issue 1 was fun. And what more could you ask for, really? If you pick up the book, you have fun with it. It's not going to blow your mind by any means. It's not going to be the greatest book you've read, maybe even all month. And it had the potential to do that. So I don't know if that's a failure by any means. It is something to consider, though. Matt, what did you think?
Well, I'm going to say something kind of controversial, but bear with me and let me ride this logic wave, so to speak. Legion of Superheroes, the more I thought about it, actually had a lot in common with George Lucas' intent behind Phantom Menace. Not in terms of quality. Let me make that very clear. But Lucas deliberately went out of his way to not pander to the old Star Wars fans and try to create something new for a new generation. And you had a huge backlash from older fans. And there's some justification there, but that's another podcast. The internet is rife with this. We don't need to retread that. But, he said, I've got to think about the next generation of fans. Not just the guys that have been around already for 20 plus years. And in the case of the Legion, seeing as how their fandom is almost exclusively guys 40 years and up, it's pretty gutsy of DC and Bendis to take that approach. Well, maybe not gutsy necessarily, but reasonable and daring, I guess, for lack of a better term. So this ain't your dad's Legion, and I really appreciate that. The character designs that went into these that Ryan Sook put in are awesome. I love the new look. I mean, it looks futuristic, and there are a lot of little good callbacks in there. And I don't know if you guys caught this or not, but one of the new creations has a Sinestro Corps ring. Oh, Cody caught it. As a matter of fact, he's on the cover right there. And you can get a better look at him on the double-page spread of the entire team about midway through the book. So I can't wait to find out who this dude is.
Right? I had to double back. Like, I got past that page and it was like, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Yeah.
Really?
There's some coolness going on here. There's some new characters to play with. And I mean, you guys have all kind of touched on the more Bendis-y flourishes in the writing. And yeah, we all knew what was to be expected with that. It is what it is. I think for me, what stopped this from being a stone awesome debut issue was the plot itself is fairly thin, but in hindsight, that there's a ton of table setting going on. You know, just a general introduction to the characters and their world. Now, if you're going to do that, though, you have to blow readers' minds. Now, from an art perspective, Ryan Sook and company, I think, very much pulled it off. Those double-page spreads are poster-worthy. But just from a storytelling perspective, Bendis just didn't quite sell me on the grandeur of it, and especially not with Superboy as my POV character. And this is me, just didn't quite feel it. So I think Cody and I both came to about the same grade of an 8 out of 10, more or less, but we came at it from very different angles, and that's fine. But I freaking love the Legion. So I cannot wait to read more of this. Guys, do you have any final thoughts on this one?
How did I miss a Sinestro ring? Come on.
Yeah.
Right. That's now I need to go back once we're done with
You
this.
do
I
need to go back.
I
Right?
feel like I've cheated myself out of this one.
Yeah. I
Easter
missed
egg
out on
again.
that one.
And I guarantee you there's more in there than that I just didn't see. But that one did definitely stick out for me. So, okay, without further ado, we're going to move on to Undiscovered Country, #1 from Image, co-written by Scott Snyder and Charles Soule, art by Giuseppe Camuncoli and Daniele Orlandini. This comic tells of a slightly in the future world where the United States of America has dropped out from the world stage, built a wall around itself, had no communication with the outside world. There's no commentary there whatsoever. Meanwhile, the rest of the world in Europe, there's been a massive epidemic, and somebody reaches out from within the United States and offers a cure. And so an exploratory team breaches the undiscovered country that is the United States for the first time in 30 years. And cue Mad Max, maybe. Mike, what did you think?
The dust, right? We all got to watch out for the dust. But no, I think Image did it again with this one. You know, I think this is going to fall in with what I perceive, and this is just me, but classic titles such as like I Kill Giants and Kick Ass, stuff like that, because Spawn, right? This just reminds me of something like if Mad Max were to kind of marry up with the old show, I think it was called China Beach, right? So it's like part medical, part post-apocalyptic war. It's just really good, but I think the story sets up well. I think it teases enough to where you want to come back. There's not enough. You get a little bit of hint of what's going on. The art is really good. I think Charlotte is probably going to be that character that kind of maybe comes out, maybe not as, we don't think she'll be a huge player, but I just think something about her, just maybe it's the moxie, maybe it's the way she's written as a character, I think is really good. Titles like these usually, I feel that they live and die with how the characters kind of mature and progress, and I think titles like this could very easily go dry because it's like a zombie story, right? I mean, anyone can write a zombie story, but can you make that zombie story interactive? Are you bringing readers back? Are you having readers want more? But I think this one, with this title, I think Undiscovered Country does that. I think after just one issue, I think it's going to have not a problem with bringing readers back. I think this is going to be that title where as comic people, as comic readers, obviously we're going to go to our LCSs. We're always going to pick up, issues 1 and 2 and whatever. But I think a title like this is going to be exactly like I Kill Giants, where we knew about I Kill Giants, but until it was collected and in Barnes and Noble or whatever, now people knew about it. Like same thing with Saga and stuff like that. But I really do think Undiscovered Country is going to be that title to where it's just gonna blow up. It's gonna blossom. Everyone's gonna fall in love with it. Right now, issue 1, really just deep characters, deep writing. It's really good for me.
Awesome. Nick, how about you?
I loved it. So when it was announced, Scott Snyder, I mean, how can I not be on board? But he's not a writer that I always associate with political commentary or social commentary. I know he puts a more intimate touch in his writing with family and closer emotional aspects like that. So whenever we get this announcement of an isolationist America 30 years in the future, I was a little uncertain of how Snyder would be able to pull this off. And honestly, if he would go far enough with the concept, because that's ultimately what I'm interested in. And I know he's gearing towards a character-driven drama with this within this wild post-apocalyptic world, but ultimately it's how this world develops that I'm really going to stay on board for. And I was so excited to see that. I don't think that he pulled any punches in the commentary in this book and what the context of it is, and I loved it. I think this is not that far off base, really. It feels like we live in this world already. It's just so batshit crazy, and also feels a little real, maybe too real. America taking up this isolationist policy, but also claiming they have this, end-all cure that humanity just has to embrace them once more, and they're going to take the lead in the world. Love it. I think they approached it correctly, and they're developing a world in an efficient way that's not going to burn out in 6 issues, like Mike said. It's going to continue in a way that will keep readers engaged, and you can't complain about the artwork almost at any level. It was just awesome execution. Some of the creature design, I don't know, it's whimsical or wacky or whatever word you want to use for it, but it felt like it pulled me out of the seriousness of it, and that it was a little too cartoonish. I get that. The Mad Max vibe helped, but I also got this influence of Jurassic Park. And, this team is recruited and taken to this almost dystopian foreign place that is overrun with danger and terror, but you need these scientists to really research it. And that, it's not a park full of dinosaurs, it's the United States, which, yeah, it hit a lot of these notes where the more you dig into it, the more you're like, this works on this level too. And I really enjoyed that about it. Just solid storytelling, brilliant art. It's what you want out of comics. Cody,
Cool.
What about you?
All right, so let me preface this with I cannot contain my excitement about this book. I've been talking about this book to everybody that will listen for the last couple of weeks. I was fortunate enough that Scott Snyder reached out. He sent me a copy of number 1, and he sent me a rough copy of number 2. It's not finished yet, but I have read number 2, so I got to choose my words carefully here to avoid month in advance spoilers. But this book to me, I loved it reading through it, and then when I read through the postscript from Snyder, that's when everything really started to come together for me. One of the things he talks about that he and Charles really wanted to focus on was that right now in the world, as consumers, we all exist in echo chambers to some degree. Like, our children will never have to watch, experience, learn about, listen to anything they don't want to listen to. Filters, you can silence everything, you can silence all the noise, and just take in what you want. And that's becoming a growing problem. So imagine if we were isolated from the world with only our US-centric echo chambers. What would that look like? So when you look at this map that Sam shows them towards the end, you see these various regions. And I think what we're experiencing in this Mad Max desert region right now is vastly different than what we're going to experience as we move throughout the rest of the United States. And to me, that is just one of the most remarkable concepts I've seen in comics in a very long time. Somebody said to Robert Kirkman, Undiscovered Country, I checked it out. Looks like it's going to be the new Walking Dead. And Kirkman's response was, no, it's going to be the first undiscovered country. And I think I think that is, one, about the highest praise you could possibly get, and two, feels incredibly accurate to me. Like, this is a politically charged book without going into that somewhat ugly, blunt force trauma, over the top, hit you in the face with it. Like, it's constructing its own politics out of the way that it understands the world within the scope of this world. It's absolutely remarkable. I could not recommend it more. The art has a certain John Cassaday in his prime kind of look to it, with the way that it's clean. I mean, if I didn't know any better, I'd say Laura Martin clearly did the colors on this. So I just, top to bottom, everybody that's working on this book loves working on this book, and it shows. And I think that's not something we see every day. I really wish it was, but I think that's not exactly the most common thing in today's comic culture. I think you see people work on a book for a paycheck. Not going to name any names, but I'm looking over at Marvel and saying, some of y'all are just turning in a script, saying, all right, is it done? It's done. Great.
Ouch.
Not so here. Like, this is some serious passion project work. Go get it. Get yourselves ready for number 2, because number 2 starts to explain a lot of stuff, take some of these characters into some real major developmental moments. So bear it down, because this one's going to be a good one. Scott said he plans on running this about 35 or so issues. So they have a long-term plan, and we'll see how that plays out.
Well, that's good, because I hate it when I get hyped for a new number 1, and then after the fact, I find out it's only a 5 or 6 issue miniseries, and I really wanted like 100 issues of this.
Right.
That said, I'm a little more reserved in my response to this book. I think the construction of the world is solid. I think the hook is fantastic. However, I have to say, I've seen this before on a lot of indie books, where I've been hooked in by the premise, and then I lose interest 7, 8, 9 issues in because the characters themselves haven't grabbed me the way that I want them to. Now, that's not to say that the character work in this book is bad by any stretch of the imagination. Snyder and Soule are awesome writers. They're very talented. But I'll also say that none of the leads really grabbed me in that way. That's not to say that they can't be further constructed, but there was no Jesse Custer. There was no Spider Jerusalem or Agent Graves type character. And granted, in this world, that may not necessarily fit. And, all things being equal. But I just want to take a kind of cautious wait-and-see attitude as to whether or not this is going to necessarily grab me for the long haul. I will say that I'm not necessarily turned off, but I felt like some of the more Mad Max elements that came into play towards the end of the book didn't seem to fit what I understood the book was going to be. I thought it would be a little more grounded, and yet the minute we get over the wall, we've got giant critters running around with people riding on them, and they're looking for the guzzling. And again, Cody, I think you're 100% right that there's a hell of a lot more to see. And honestly, the pros of the book really outweigh any cons I may have had. And my wife just tried to walk in. And I will say this. For only $3.99, there's a hell of a lot of comic in here. I bet you it took me at least 30 or 40 minutes to get through this thing. And I mean, that's including reading some of the back matter in it too. But how many comics offer a deal like that anymore? I mean, honestly, we live in an era when it's getting more and more commonplace for a comic to be just feel disposable because you read it in less than 5 minutes, Tom King. And the Snyder and Soule don't play that game. Like, I won't go so far as to say that there's a Claremont level of dialogue, but there's a Claremont level of dialogue on some of these pages, but it works. Yeah, go ahead, Cody.
Yeah, so when's the last time you read an issue that introduces an entire paradigm, an entire status quo, a full issue of world building with 0 text boxes full of bullshit exposition?
Oh, I agree.
Yep.
Like, that was remarkable to me. It was entirely done in dialogue that felt still organic.
Yeah, it wasn't a bunch of expository dialogue either.
Yeah.
It was just people having conversations. And that's what you want.
Right.
You know, tell, don't show, or show, don't tell. Show me this world. And yeah, absolutely right. In one issue, I get this world. And I mean, I can't wait to find out more. So hats off to everybody involved in this. It's a mammoth achievement. I saw somewhere earlier today that this was Image's second biggest launch of the decade, which I didn't look. I would assume the first biggest had to have been Saga. But that's an amazing achievement. Just astonishing. And not for nothing, I forgot to put it on my pull sheet and had to go to a backup LCS to get my copy. So it's definitely selling. Those numbers aren't lies. So guys, do you have any closing thoughts on Undiscovered Country?
I love that Cody brought up the Walking Dead article reference, because that's what a lot of people have been, I guess that's what their mind goes to, because it's a post-apocalyptic story from Image. But I love that Scott Snyder said that he wants to run at about 35 issues, because Robert Kirkman originally planned for Walking Dead to end around the time that the governor went away. And he was introduced in around issue 27, so another arc after that puts you right about the same time frame. And it's that type of format, and it's that type of story. And honestly, if it keeps selling like The Walking Dead and it just keeps up with this momentum, it's going to be undeniable to return to it. And here goes Image with another 100+ issue series that we're all going to be down for. And like Matt said, they're already selling, and you don't want to be that person that saw The Walking Dead one on the shelf and just didn't jump in. So do it now.
It'll never last. It'll never last.
Zombies? Nobody likes those comics.
Yeah, right? You still read zombie comics.
Yeah. Cody's guiltily pointing at himself. That's okay. I passed up the final Marvel issue of G.I. Joe when it was on the shelf, and I've, in more recent years, shelled out north of 100 for it. So I feel your pain. So our final book for this week, New Mutants, The Return, Dawn of X, #1, written by Jonathan Hickman and Ed Brisson, art by Rod Reese. Diving right into the Krakoa Dawn of X paradigm, timeline, whatever you want to call it, we've got the New Mutants and a little bit of Generation X thrown in for flavor. We've got Mondo and Chamber and probably Skin hanging around somewhere. I think even Dearly Departed Sync was mentioned at one point, so I am totally okay with that. But the New Mutants decide they need their buddy Sam, a.k.a. Cannonball, to come see the awesomeness of this Krakoa. So they journey off into Shi'ar space to get their friend. They hitch a ride with the Starjammers. Things do not go as planned. Nick, you're up. What'd you think?
I didn't like it.
Okay.
What am I doing here? X-Men, I was really excited for this Hickman era because it's supposed to, bring some coherence to this wild X-Men storyline, and I felt very uninvited to this one. I didn't really care about the characters and what was established. So this journey that they went on, it didn't hook me. And I cannot talk about the story without talking about Corsair from the Starjammers. Looks exactly like Ben Stiller from Dodgeball. And I could not look it up. He even has the headband, it's the same hair. There's no way that's a coincidence, and I couldn't get that out of my head, but that wasn't my only issue with the book. I understand that this is supposed to be a character-driven story, but for a number one issue, I understand it relied on the knowledge that you bring into the story as a fan. I didn't bring a lot, so there wasn't a lot to hook me into this story, and I thought for a number one issue to disregard that on such a fundamental level, I was a bit disappointed, because you see a lot of these number one issues hitting the stands right now, so you know a lot of fans are excited to dive into this. And unlike the last book we talked about, this one is not that new reader friendly. You technically can follow along with the story, and you understand what happened with this space epic and why. You're not going to come back to the next issue. This is not something you're going to put it down after, this being the first New Mutants book you've ever read. Ooh, I don't know if I would come back to this series after the first issue. And that's unfortunate, because I know that there's a lot of great things happening with Krakoa and the concept, but this is something Marvel does. It's a great concept that's spread over a lot of different titles. It's going to be hit and miss, and some of them are going to be geared towards a very specific fan base. And that's something that I guess I have to be okay with, because there are things that are geared towards me too, and it's a part of their business plan. X-Men is a huge franchise that is more than just, hey, I'm an X-Men fan. Comic Watch has a huge following of X-Men fans that are all over the spectrum of characters that they love and stories that they follow. And I assume that this is playing into a group that I just haven't been involved with or that engaged with, so the story was just not for me. And I came away from that book thinking this was not something I was invited to. And that's okay.
So let's assume momentarily, just for the sake of argument, you did have more familiarity with these characters. They were maybe not near and dear to your heart, but at least some characters you were cognizant of. What would your feelings on the book been like then?
Yeah, it does change how you approach the story. We talked about this with Doom Patrol, that they labeled it a number one issue, and it was actually like issue 13 or 14 in the story, and that's how it functioned. And I felt like this one you were kind of thrown into maybe issue 14 of the series, but it's a new arc, and it ties heavily into the previous one that follows along to build up this epic. So maybe if you bring something into the story that you understand these characters more, their dynamics, their struggles, and how they get along with one another, why they're paired up like this, and what they're trying to do. But the story, the issue itself didn't do that. So it relied on an outside knowledge of these characters, and that kind of bummed me out, but I get it. Maybe I can come back to it in a few months and be like, oh, I get this, but not right now.
I got you. Okay. Cody?
Yeah, so I had some technical difficulties, so I missed a lot of what Nick said, but I disagree with everything that Nick said.
Nick was the spoiler this round.
Absolutely everything. I thought this was second only to Marauders. Marauders came out of the gates really, really strong, but this is one of my favorite of the new launches. The character work in this was absolutely remarkable, especially when you factor in what these characters have been through recently. This was almost a hard reset for these characters. This takes them back to New Mutants. These are the kids that I grew up in the 80s reading. I mean, these are 40-year-old characters that we're talking about. So yes, there is a learning curve, and it's not exactly...
They ain't new anymore.
Right. I like that they addressed that right from the beginning, too.
Yes.
But yeah, they're characters that have, in recent years, gone through a lot of changes. And with the resurrections and with the kind of soft reboot, if you will, that Hickman's doing with the X-Men books, we finally have some kind of recognizable kids here in the game again. Like Berto is a smartass, and it comes across and it reads beautifully. Ileana feels like a kid again. Like she had so much of her childhood robbed from her. Am I frozen? I sure look frozen.
Let it go.
Okay. But yeah, I like the art from Rod Rice. I feel like if Bill Sienkiewicz had been drawing in the age of digital art, this is what it would look like. So for me, it's right on brand for New Mutants. The story itself, it's a bunch of kids that have grown up together, been through some real shit, and are out to go get their best friend that they're missing. Like, that's some straight up Bildungsroman type stuff. Like, I'm totally on board. I want to see more Gen X as we go on. I'm looking forward to seeing some more of the young X-Men. And I mean, I loved it. Everything about it was exactly what I wanted it to be.
Awesome. Mike, what say you?
I gotta go in line with Nick. I gotta buy a ticket on that bus because I really felt that I dove in on issue like 35. You know, it read strange, and maybe because I'm not well versed, but I was really looking forward to this. I thought Marauders was great, X-Men was great. Obviously, who didn't love Hawks and Pox? So with this one, it was kind of like, okay, the start was great, but this really felt like if a little is great, then more must be better type deal. And it really felt like Marvel was like, hey, we found something that energizes people. Okay, great. Here, more. You know, and maybe this is the thing where you brought up with Legion's fan base, where it's a bunch of 40-year-old dudes that this stuff was geared to. Well, I said not bad, obviously. And me and Cody were talking earlier and about different perspectives, and I'm going to go back and read it because maybe I need to read it from a different angle. There was some stuff that was cool in it. I mean, I love Hickman. Let me grab my notes here. Sorry about that. But the wolf, I think it's the Wolfsbane part in the beginning was really cool, where she thought, I died and got in heaven, where this is heaven. So I thought that was kind of cool. But the rest of it was just, and the Ben Stiller thing was marvelous, by the way. I thought I was the only one. But I don't know, it read weird, and maybe it's because I'm not well versed. I thought the art was kind of, I don't know, it was weird. This whole issue just read weird for me. I'm not going to say it's bad because obviously I'm like, one in like a billion who probably didn't like it other than Nick. But I didn't hate it. I won't say I'd hate it, but I just felt that it read weird, and I felt like I was coming in the middle of something. But maybe I really just need to kind of just dive into it and really dissect it. Maybe there is something there obviously there is something there because they've been around for longer than I have. But at the same time, I just felt, I don't know, I just felt it missed it, and I feel that this is something that Marvel was like, oh hey, let's just do it. It just felt like they just kind of cashed it in. But I obviously that's just me, but I don't know. It was weird.
Well, never let it be said that Marvel will not cash in on your nostalgia.
Yeah.
But as somebody that loves the era that the New Mutants were big in, which of course was the 80s, oddly enough, I don't have a lot of resonance with the team itself. I'm an X-Force and Gen X kind of an X-Men fan. So the New Mutants to me kind of exist as an abstract thing that I should like. And they're fine, I like the character, most of the characters on an individual level, but just as a cohesive unit, they've never really just overpowered me with love. Or
You're
anything.
dead to me.
Hold on. My God, that's called a preamble. Having said that, like, there's something genuine in the delivery of this comic that for me, I couldn't deny. Like, a big part of it actually comes from Ed Brisson doing the dialogue on this issue, because let's face it, Hickman, as great of a plotter as he is, his dialogue tends to come across as kind of mechanical. Mm-hmm. But Brisson brought a real heart and humanity to these characters that has kind of, that I just loved. I couldn't not love, you know? I mean, Roberto Sunspot stole every scene that he was in. And I just kind of wanted to hang out with the guy, you know? It's not necessarily new reader friendly, but I think it's designed in such a way that you could win people over with the sheer likability of the characters here. I mean, what you know, the plot here is they're going to find their friend, you know? That's it. That's deceptively simple, but there's so much heart put in behind these characters that I really just didn't care. By contrast, there also wasn't a lot of meat on the bone to the plot in Legion of Superheroes, but because the characterization was on the thin side, I didn't have that same response. So, New Mutants, I really enjoyed it. And just go a little bit bigger. We've now got 5 of the 6 Dawn of X books out, and there's really only been one that I didn't take a shine to, and that was Excalibur. So Marvel has clearly stumbled onto something pretty big here, and I can't wait to see where we are a year from now. You know, when the next phase or whatever of you know, if this is the Dawn of X, what's next? Dusk of X? I don't know. Night of X. But if we're gonna stick with that theme, I don't know. But you know, we talked about this an episode or 2 back. There's clearly a long game at work. Mm-hmm. Hickman is having his cake and eating it too right now, and I am absolutely okay with that, as long as they keep producing books that just make me feel happy to be reading the comic, and enjoying these characters. So, you know, if you didn't dig it, I get it. Okay, I get it. There's a lot of continuity to the X-Men and a lot of characters, and you know, so it goes. We have lost Cody again. I hope he comes back, but until that time, we're gonna move on to our final segment. What have you been reading, and what are you looking forward to read? Nick, you're on deck.
All right, so I'm going to switch it up a bit, in that I just spoke about how I am really trying with the X-Men, and so I want to open this up a little bit and use a couple of minutes for discussion. I'm looking for stories that will pull me into the X-Men lore and make me love them. What say you? Any suggestions?
Ooh.
Put you on the spot real quick.
Put you on blast. You know, I'll be honest, you could start right where I started. Go to your dollar bins, go to your quarter bins, buy X-Men number 1 through 3 from 1991. Claremont, Jim Lee. It's a great jumping on point. They're awesome issues in and of themselves. You can get them for nothing. Mm-hmm. No. You could do a hell of a lot worse. To be perfectly honest. Man, I mean, honestly, from there, you almost want to work your way backwards through the Claremont years. Mm-hmm. I would suggest anything. And here's an odd thing about the Claremont years is that the stories themselves, in my tend to rise and fall with whatever artist he's working with. So it starts off decent but not great with Dave Cockrum. Byrne comes on board. Of course, we all know what happens there. Byrne leaves. Cockrum comes back. It's kind of aimless for a little while. Then Paul Smith comes on. Holy crap. 10 issues of gloriousness. You've got the Brood. You've got the quasi-return of the Phoenix and Madeline Pryor. And then John Romita Jr. comes on, and it's kind of meanders for a little while. It's okay. Silvestri comes on. Holy crap! And it just goes back and forth like that for 16 years. But if if you can find, like, I don't know, on Comixology or something like that, the original Brood Saga, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cody knows what I'm talking about. That
He's
came back
back.
in. Hey, so Cody, Nick is wanting to know things what will get him into the X-Men. What say you?
Right, yeah. So I've been talking to Nick about this, and we're putting together a reading list, character specific,
I love reading this.
of different things to get him into specific characters, stories that I've read over the years. I've read a lot of X-Men books. I own a ridiculous amount of X-Men books. Yeah, I would say, like, I told him today to read God Loves Man Kills. I think that is the absolute beating heart of everything it is to be an X-Men fan. And then beyond that, I mean, you can go in so many different directions. And one of the beauties of X-Men and the ways that it has splintered off and fractured off is that there's something for everybody.
Mhm.
You like big
Absolutely.
sci-fi things, you like government intrigue, you like growing up, themes of, coming of age. All of that's there. Just depend horror. Like, if anything, Nick, New Mutants is up your alley. Like, most of the original 100 issues of New Mutants was a horror series.
Well, like, what was this number one then? Because that was not horror.
Well, Sienkiewicz contributed a lot to that aesthetic.
Yeah, like all the early Legion story, the Demon Bear saga, all that stuff had very heavy horror influences. Even, I would argue, a little bit into the Asgardian Wars. So yeah, I mean, there's so much. Like, this is a conversation we could have for hours.
We could do a whole episode on this easily, and it would be a double-length episode.
I thought I would get some good discussion, but just to be quick, what I'm looking forward to, we got Far Sector 1 next week. That is the new Green Lantern. That is part of the Young Animal imprint. Super excited for that.
And we also look interesting.
It does. Such a great concept, and the artwork looks great. So super excited. And with Marvel, we have Morbius #1, which horror title, like, ready for it. Ready for it.
Also, it has that weird variant where he has this amazing Nightwing-esque ass for no reason, but the rest of him is really horrific and monstrous.
Right.
So, I mean, that's got to appeal to somebody.
Me. That appeals to me.
Cody, what have you been reading? What are you looking forward to?
So I read a lot of stuff this week. I read a OGN from a small press publisher in Canada called Arsenal Pulp Press. The book was called Swimming in Darkness, and it was a really cool kind of intersection between, I don't know, personal obsession and also cultural obsession. It deals with some folklore. I mean, it was written in French originally, translated as it was brought over here. But it was a really interesting book that I highly recommend. Has a very, I don't know, early 90s, like Hernandez Brothers kind of feel to it in its style. I also started reading Monstrous by Marjorie Liu. And that has been a real eye-opening experience. Boy, the artwork is absolutely phenomenal. And it just keeps going. Like, you think it's going to start to flag off a little bit. Like, there's no way no human being has time to put this much detail into a book month after month, but they're doing it. It's happening. So I'm real excited about that. I'm about, I don't know, 6 issues or so in. Had an opportunity possibly to interview Marjorie this weekend. It fell through, but there will be opportunities in the future. I talked to her agent a little bit, and we'll see what we can do. And for what I'm looking forward to, I just had it and I lost it. Oh God, it was a good one too. I was gonna say Far Sector before.
This is why I take notes.
I honestly didn't even know if we were still doing this segment. Give me 2 seconds here, because I have the database. Oh yeah, Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Blackest Night. Now, anybody that knows me knows that the Jeff Johns era Green Lantern and Blackest Night was the event that was made for me. Right, absolute perfection. I was totally into it. And these Tales from the Dark Multiverse have actually been really interesting. I don't care about the Batman Who Laughs and the Infected and all that crap. But this looks like it could be really interesting. I'm really looking forward to it. It's the only one that I was like, no reviewer who wants to cover Tales of the Dark Multiverse. You can do all of them, but this one is mine.
That's good. Mike, how about you?
Still reading through Why the Last Man, which is still good. It's still one of my favorite. Like I said last time, work kind of gets in the way, so I had to put it down, but we picked it back up again, obviously. But as far as wanting to read, if you're not reading Mike Norton's Battle Pug, you're probably not doing comics right. I'm going to go on a limb there and say that. Issue 3 is getting ready to come out. It's the War on Christmas. Comics are fun. This is fun. Obviously we know what it's about from the first issue, but from everything from I can't even really describe them, but obviously what world leaders are in there because they're depicted. Someone's depicted as almost like a minotaur that can't really speak American type deal, So, but it's fun because the reindeers are possessed rainbow unicorns, and it's just fun, especially with 3, the pug actually gets revealed. There's a big secret with the warrior's companion, who is a giant pug. How are you not reading this? How is this not fun? But yeah, check it out. Mike Norton's Battle Pug. It's super fun. It's really cheesy stuff, but it's I don't know. It's fun. It's from Image, yeah, it's fun. It's good stuff. Everyone should check it out.
Awesome. Well, for me, I decided in light of how good Justice League has been lately, but how also continuity-heavy Justice League has been lately, I would go back to the No Justice miniseries and then work my way back through everything. And No Justice holds up slightly better than I remember, but at the same time, I still don't like it because it feels like a bunch of variant action figures thrown together into nonsensical teams to fight giants and save trees or something that are made out of philosophy and sadness or something. And it just doesn't work. It's Scott Snyder really, really, really playing with his MacGuffins a little more than I like. Contrast that. Justice League #1, the current volume getting started. And when you sit down and read it, especially knowing some of the stuff that is to come, those earlier issues actually hold up a lot better than I remember them. So bear that in mind, possibly frustrated Justice League fans. What am I looking forward to? I'll tell you. Metalman. #1 was the best book I bought that week it came out. And I didn't expect it. I really didn't. I just picked it up because why not? Holy crap! It was great. I cannot wait to see where they go with this series. DC's really been on a winning streak for the most part with their 12-issue miniseries that they've been putting out. Martian Manhunter. Batman's Grave is off to a fantastic start, as Cody knows. What else was there? Lois Lane. Somebody likes Jimmy Olsen.
There's also Dial H Hero.
Oh, I didn't realize that was a 12-issue.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, that's been outstanding as well. So, people were kind of bereft over the fact that they had axed a bunch of titles last year, but this new strategy seems to be working for them. There's a ton of quality books out, Inferior 5 notwithstanding, which unfortunately did get cut from 12 to 6 issues because of poor sales. So that's me. Looking forward to whatever next awesome thing DC puts out. So I think that's it for this week, fellas. Do you have any final thoughts?
Can I tell a story real quick?
I would love to hear a story.
So this is my first episode with Mike. This is actually the first time I've been face to face with Mike. Hi, Mike.
Hi.
About a year and a half, close to 2 years ago, I guest spotted on Masters of the Retroverse podcast with Adam Bradbury.
Yes.
And that was the very first podcast I had ever done. And after doing that, and I came on as a comic specialist, and I talked about comics, and I talked a little bit about Toy Biz, because I collect the 90s Toy Biz figures, and it was a really fun experience. And I came out of that talking to Derbs, and B, and JJ, and Ross, and we were like, we should do a podcast. So fast forward to about a year and a half later, we've already got a podcast up and running. And Adam messages me and says, hey, I know this guy who basically just lives and breathes comics. And he's like, I want to link you up with him. I think you're going to like him. I think he might be a good match for Comic Watch. And that guy was Mike, who went to high school, obviously, with Adam. And now he's on this podcast. And what a weird, cool, like full circle community thing that's happened there. So I wanted to share that with all 5 of you that are out there watching us.
Yeah.
That Mike was destined to be on this show well before anybody ever heard his name.
I love it. And also his new name, Scoop Johnson.
Yes, Scoop.
Scoop Johnson. Well, with that, I want to thank Cody White for stopping back by to visit us, his old home. Cody, you're welcome back anytime. You can work it out. This has been Mike and Nick and Matt, and we are the Comic Watchers. We watch comics so that you can too watch comics and buy them and go to your LCS and support them. There was probably something a lot better coming from that than what actually wound up. But hey, you know what? We're 54 episodes in, and we're just growing. We're on SoundCloud, we're on Spotify, we're on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, any platform you can imagine. So thank you for listening. Read comics, support your local comic shop, and as always, get all your news and reviews from comic-watch.com. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.